Welcome, Lars, to the conversation
Thank you. Greetings,
today.
everyone. Good morning to wherever you are, and good evening to Asia, and good day to Europe and South Africa or Africa.
No, thank you for accepting this invitation. We are going to have a series of questions today just to understand a little bit more about how Lars see the war and what is the outlook of coal in Europe and the war, and if it is possible to have a future energy crisis due to lack of coal in these locations or around the globe. Lars, please go ahead.
Well, what is the outlook for coal? So you want to right away speak about coal first. Okay. Um,
Yes,
I think the people on the call, I see some faces that I'm familiar with. Greetings, everyone. So maybe let's speak quickly about coal. I think on a high level, coal is still the most important energy resource for electricity. And after oil, the second most important for energy as a total, as a whole. We just had 2023 was another record year for coal. It's about 8.6 billion tons that we consumed and produced. Just to put things into perspective, if you think about the global world of materials or commodities that we consume or produce, I think it's roughly 100 billion tons that we are sort of either digging out or growing or using from our planet every year. And almost 10% of that is coal. So it's a very, very significant resource commodity next to iron ore. It's probably, it's one of those two main commodities, right? And the importance of coal has slightly reduced over the past decades, but not much. For electricity, the importance is still more than 1/3. It's about 36% of all electricity every day on average comes from coal. And when you think about primary energy, the total energy, which includes everything, it's 1/4, 25%. And what the outlook is, well, I would say I'm not bullish on coal, but I would say I'm not bearish either. So I think coal will probably continue to rise in total and in absolute value slightly over the next years. I don't see how it's possible not to rise. But of course, as newer resources come into the world and changing energy mixes, probably the relative importance of coal might slightly reduce over the next year. So that's my current projection. But of course, I'm very happy to speak more about coal. But you let me know, Monica, where you want to guide this discussion today.
so something that is important to realize that I agree with you on coal is still a very important source of energy around the globe. And from my perspective, the importance of using it more efficiently. So one of my questions regarding this particular point is, do you see a possible energy crisis like the one that we have with the war in Ukraine due to lack of coal or maybe some disruptions on coal distribution around the globe? Or you see that probably with the new renewables, we are not going to have something like that in the future? I am asking because, for example, the Ukraine war was a particular disruption condition in Europe that brings the coal a new life in many parts as well.
Well, it's actually an interesting question about the energy crisis as a whole. So first of all, I do not think that we're lacking coal in any ways. If anything, we're lacking places to combust the coal, or we're lacking logistical capacity. So I think we have no issue with the lack of actually anything really, right? I mean, there's enough oil, there's enough gas, there's enough coal, there's enough lithium, to be honest. It's only a question of how much or what you need to do to get to it. And do you have the industrial capacity to actually utilize it? In the case of coal, it's the power plants, right? And the logistical capacity. So no, I don't see a lack of coal at all. I do see a lack of investment in coal. And that will certainly contribute to the energy crisis, in my view, we are in. In my view, the world is in a global energy crisis as we speak, which of course appears differently in different countries. But my concern is, and many people are concerned about it, it's a lack of investment.
No, that is a great point of view, because sometimes we forget that it's not just the lack of the resource, but the lack of the investments on that resource that can cause problems, like you mentioned. Thank you for that insight. I guess it's so valuable. So we can move on the next question. When we go a little bit deeper in your book, about you talk about the new energy revolution. So tell us a little bit as about your long-term vision for energy regarding that.
Yeah. I guess it first starts with the understanding that literally energy is at the basis of the entire human industrial development. When I think about the development of energy, of course, in the past 200 years, we have seen many revolutions, right? I mean, we saw the Industrial Revolution, which actually started with coal, but then gas came, oil came, or I don't know if oil came first, probably they came together. The nuclear revolution, in a way, I mean, allowed us or multiplied the availability of energy by I don't know, by 1,000-fold, hugely. So for me, the future of energy goes very much along that line. Of course, we will continue to invest or need to invest in R&D to come to that next stage of what the future of energy will be. And I call it the new energy revolution, where we literally are able to wean off our current fossil-based energy system, or at least reduce the dependence to something more efficient, to something probably also cleaner, to something less disruptive, but really more efficient, more energy dense, because we will need so much more energy in the future, in the next decades, in the next centuries, if we survive, that there's, in my view, we cannot sustain on our current energy system, which is basically oil, coal, and gas based, which is 80% of today's energy. So taking that step back, I literally see that we will go into that future, and that future. People ask me, what will that future be? Well, I mean, of course, the nuclear force will be a big role, that fusion and fission will play a big role. Another thing I think is there is a huge amount of energy within our planet, right? Within our planet, just geothermal is one example. So there's a huge amount of energy in the system, in our planet. If we find a way to harvest that energy, which, by the way, may even include white hydrogen, I don't know. There's something there, and if we find a way to harvest that efficiently and densely, that could be part of that future. I don't know. Another part could be literally the energy that's within our planetary system. So the energy of the sun is incredible, right? I guess fusion gives us part of that already. But if we find a way to harness the energy available in our planetary system, our solar system, much better and more efficiently, that could be also part of that new energy revolution, which, by the way, has nothing to do with today's photovoltaic system or even wind system, right? If you think about, so it's a nuclear force, it's the energy within our planet, the energy outside of our planet and our planetary system. And then the fourth one, I would say, if some green animal, some UFO, drops some stone, something we don't know. So basically, it's the whole thing. We don't know what we don't know. So there is something new that's going to come, which we have no idea today. And that is how we've seen, the past history or the history of inventions, the things that came up or discoveries. It's just incredible. So I'm very, very certain that within 100, 150 years, we've literally solved our energy issue. Right, so either we've killed ourselves by then, or we have solved the issue, and the so-called fossil fuels, which might not be actually fossil itself, will be doing, that's a separate point. But the fossil fuels, they will not actually reduce in the absolute use, but they will reduce in percentage terms. Probably not likely. I mean, I don't know, but that appears to me that way. So the future of energy is something new. Partially it's already there. I mean, with of course, nuclear itself is quite energy dense and amazing, and fusion we're talking about, which may be decades away. It probably is decades away, and other things that we don't know yet. So that's sort of my vision for the future of energy, and from that vision for the future of energy, there's actually two logical conclusions. One is, we need to invest to come to that new energy revolution. So we need to invest in R&D, as we already do, and maybe do more and a better job. That's number one. And the second logical conclusion is, until we have this, we invest in our existing system that we currently have to improve it, make it more efficient and cleaner. right? So if we don't do this, how are we ever going to get here? And that's, I think, the missing link in today's energy policy, right? Today's energy policy kind of forgets that this thing. I mean, actually, it's the commitment. You know what? We will invest in our existing energy system, and that is coal, oil, gas, nuclear, everything, hydro, whatever. We invest in this actively to make it better and more efficient and cleaner. And what are we doing? We're doing not that, right? If I answered that question about the long-term vision, but I hope you have an understanding and idea.
No, I share your vision as well. I think that all fossil fuels are going to be an important part of the energy mix globally. So even though they are going to reduce the percentage in the total energy mix, you are going to see an increase in tonnage. That is something that we have seen during the last couple of years with the peak of consumption of many fossils already. So this is a reality, not just a vision of the future, but something that we are living right now. Something that for me is very valuable, as you mentioned, is how to approach to energy efficiency as well. So why? Because if we don't have a power matrix or power mix completely efficient for using better the current resource that we have, it's difficult to progress. So I guess these points that you take into consideration for the new energy revolution, there are things that are not just for the future or the coming years, but are so very useful for today activities. The role of wind and solar for that future global energy. How do you see that?
So, I mean, it's a very important one. This discussion about wind and solar has become a little bit emotional, and sometimes I would even admit that I'm also sometimes a little bit emotional about it. So, what will be the role of wind and solar in that future scenario for energy? In my view, it can only be very small. It can only be very small. And the reason why that is, it has to do with two main issues. One is energy density, and the second thing is the intermittency, right? So energy density is something that I didn't think about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Today I think about it much more. Basically, if you just simple concept, there's only so much energy available per square meter. You are now in Bogota. Where are you now, Monica?
No, yes, I am Bogota. I am Bogota these
Okay, so
days.
you're in Bogota. So Bogota is quite high, and on a sunny day, you actually have very strong solar irradiance there. You're very strong solar
Yes,
available to yourself.
I
But
agree with
even
you.
in
These
Bogota,
days
which is
we have
already
been 25 degrees. That is so hot for being Bogota. I can
yes.
tell you.
So I was just in Colombia just last week, and it's just an amazing country, of course. But when you measure the energy available per square meter from that solar energy, it's very small. Even though the sun is so ridiculously strong, and there's so much solar energy within our planet or available to us, per square meter is very little. And that's energy density per square meter, right? Or per volume, whatever you want to call it. And in order to harvest that energy, we need to build an infrastructure, right? We need to build an infrastructure to harvest that energy opposite of energy dense. What is it? Energy dilute, right? So it's
Okay,
energy
yes.
dilute. Yes, it's very dilute. Yeah. And we need to install a large infrastructure to collect that. And that's what we have today with solar panels, right? So we have these infrastructures which we need to place to collect it. And because it's so energy dilute, we need a lot of infrastructure, and at least in terms of the area required. And that infrastructure, to build that infrastructure, takes what? It takes raw materials and takes energy to put up. So that's the problem. So basically, energy density, if you have an energy dilute like solar, you need to first invest too much energy, and you need to invest too much resources. You actually need to also invest too much money, right? It comes along with it in the end, in order to put available a energy sort of a collection system. The second issue is the intermittency. Intermittency is a whole different problem, because intermittency basically means that you have to deal with it. You have to condition that intermittent energy, electricity in this case, that comes to you. You have to make it available to put into the grid. But secondly, you have to have a backup or storage system to somehow overcome the times of when the sun doesn't shine. So those two reasons basically explain to any economic thinking person why solar can never play a really big role on a long scale. Now, of course, anything is possible if you force it. So if the system is forced on you with a lot of money, in the end, you just need energy, money, and raw materials to do anything in the world. And right now, we are throwing a lot of money, energy, and raw materials at solar in this case. And of course, solar is booming like crazy. Yeah? And that, in my view, is a mistake. It's an economic mistake and also an environmental mistake. Environmental because of the raw materials required, and then environmental because of the energy dilution. Because it's so dilute, you actually are plastering a lot of valuable parts of the world that otherwise either something would grow there or someone would live there, right? With this system, and we are talking about millions and millions of square kilometers of solar panels. And now this is solar, and on the wind side, it's very similar. Wind is very different, but it's also similar. So there is a metric which is proven that basically, as you harvest the energy from the wind, that wind energy actually you're reducing the wind speed logically. I mean, there's no perpetuum mobile, so something has to give. So you're reducing the wind speed. Now the wind, of course, the world is so big, and yes, the wind will be replenished from other layers in the atmosphere. But that replenishment, that energy restoration rate has a limit. And that's about 1 to 2 megawatt per square kilometers, right? I work with 1.5 megawatt per square kilometer. That is the energy restoration rate, how the world can basically restore the wind that we took out, the energy we took out. And that's been proven by various studies and empirics. So in the end, it's the same as with solar. There's only a certain, density of wind available for you to harvest. And then to harvest it again, you need to then, of course, put up, these large infrastructures, these large structures in order to harvest it. Now, despite the fact that wind, probably the wind tends to be more regular than the sun, at least in parts of the world, still it's intermittent. Still, you don't know, it may stop immediately. It means you still have to have a backup system. You need to have a storage system. And again, that has an economic impact and has an environmental impact, because environmentally, again, you are literally changing, atmospheric distribution of wind patterns. You are changing, how the surface, either the water surface or the land surface acts. There's noise issues, there's animal issues. You have you have birds, you have trees. So there is an impact. I mean, every energy system has an impact. But the impact of wind and solar, in my view, is far, far higher at grid scale, at large scale, than, let's say, a nuclear, coal, gas fired power station. So for that reason, for me, logically, it cannot be part of that future. Right now, everybody talks about it as if it will be a part of the future, and it probably will be some part of it because we're forcing it, but the world would never choose it, right? The world would never choose an inferior energy system. And the only reason why we're choosing it, or why they're not choosing it, we're told to do it, is basically because of whatever a crisis we're supposed to go into if we continue with fossil fuels. So no, wind and solar, in a short, I don't think can have a significant part of the future of energy, purely driven by economics, energy economics, and probably ecological reasons as well, driven by the low energy density as well as the intermittency fundamentally.